Hey, welcome back to Love Your Shelf. I'm Tracy, and today I'm going to be talking about my least favorite books of 2023 that I read. And I think it's pretty surprising. I tried to read some classics, I tried to read some poetry, tried to read some memoirs, tried to read some self help books. So I have a weird list of my least favorite books. They're kind of all over the place, but they're also kind of not. But there's authors that are on it I didn't expect to see, and books on it I didn't expect to see. I feel like the rest of them I could argue putting something somewhere else, but with these I just can't. So I read 91 books total in 2023. My goal was 100. I didn't make it. I could have made it, but I decided that at the end it was most important that I was reading something that I was enjoying and that I was comprehending it than to race through things. Also, 91 books is the most books I've read since I started counting how many books per year. The last 2 years I read 69. I couldn't get over that hump. So being at 91 actually is a huge stretch for me. So I am good with that. And I know there's people that read a million more books than that, and I know there's people that read a lot less. So I'm okay with where I'm at. So my least favorite book of 2023 was The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. It's only like 4 hours long or 118 pages, depending on if you're listening or reading it. But it feels like it goes on forever. Like, I thought that The Time Machine would be like a cool fantasy thing. And it did have a little air of mystery to it and excitement and adventure, but it wasn't all that great. Like, there's so many other things that have been written that I feel like are better now. And he ends up going to probably a futuristic land. We assume a futuristic land full of cannibals. So, I don't know. I expected more. I hope that that's not what our future brings. That was my least favorite book that I read this year. Even though it was very short, it felt like it just dragged on. My second least favorite book was by William Shakespeare. Not a book, I guess. It's a play. But it's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I've seen A Midsummer Night's Dream often, like multiple times. So I was very surprised when I read it. I actually didn't like it that much. And I felt like this also when I read Dial A for Aunties. And it had like very Weekend at Bernie vibes, which I like Weekend at Bernie's and I like A Midsummer Night Dream to watch. But when I'm reading it, it just seems way too fucking ridiculous. I don't know why, but I can't get my mind around it. It's just too crazy and the people seem too stupid for all this like comedy of errors to happen. So I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to either, and that was also a very short book. The next book is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. This is my first Ursula Le Guin book I've ever read. I've heard nothing but amazing things about her. So I don't know, like maybe it's me, but I felt like what she had in her book was very interesting. So it's about a guy who's on a planet where essentially scientifically he's studying them, and they can fluctuate between being men or women, so they're very gender fluid, and he's studying them, and they end up capturing him, and so he's like really far from home and thinking about his life choices. Maybe like that's what I got out of it. I read it a long time ago. Seems like a long time ago. It was one of the first books I read in 2023, and I just wasn't super impressed by it. But I do want to read something else by Ursula Le Guin. Like maybe that just wasn't the book. It was a book I got at Goodwill. But yeah, we'll see. The next one is I Want to Die, but I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. I don't know, Tteokbokki. I didn't dislike this book, and I felt like there were definitely things within it that I resonated with and I understood, but it just didn't catch my attention as much as I wanted it to. The next one is Sleeper and Spindle, Neil Gaiman, which I was surprised by. I love specific things by Neil Gaiman, but I haven't loved any book I've read from him. I really like The Sandman, and I really like Good Omens, and American Gods looks really good, but I've never watched it. But yeah, I didn't love Sleeper and Spindle, which is kind of like a take on. Actually, I read another book that's similar to it. So I read another book called The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro, who also wrote Clara and the Sun, which I loved, but I didn't like The Buried Giant but as much. But it's about like kind of a fog coming over the land and wiping away everyone's memories. And this was like a fog coming over the land and making everyone sleep. So it was like Snow White plus Sleeping Beauty plus The Buried Giant all rolled into one. And it's also very short. It was like 48 pages. I read it or listened to it really quickly, but it didn't hold my attention, probably because so much of it seemed like other things I've already experienced. The next one is Earthlings. Earthlings. Earthlings is by Sayaka Murata, and she also wrote Convenience Store Woman, which I haven't read, but Earthlings doesn't make me want to read it. It's considered a horror, and it has so many triggers, like too many triggers for me to have liked it, honestly. But I do think about it a lot. It has been living rent-free in my head since I read it in August. So I guess, like, it's still art. It still made me feel something. Freaking horrified, apparently, because I didn't love it. But yeah. And last but not least, because least was the time machine, I read Crime and Punishment this year, and I thought that it was going to be really good. I've heard nothing but good things about it, honestly, and I do enjoy Russian literature, but I feel like the crime was over so fast. Like, the main character did the crime, and then I got punished for 600 pages. That's how I feel. I'm sorry. I understand, the points that they're trying to make within the storyline, but it just felt like a lot of people I didn't enjoy conversing about things while I listened to how ridiculous they sounded. Like, oh, that sounds horrible. So those books are my least favorite books of 2023. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about books in 2023 that were my favorite. What are some books that you read this year that you didn't enjoy? I want to know so I can make sure I don't read them. But anyway, I know that this is probably wildly unpopular. Like, I have Neil Gaiman in here. I have William Shakespeare in here. I have a few classics in here. I have Ursula Le Guin in here. I have Crime and Punishment in here. Like, what? That's crazy.